My name is Peter Muhr. I'm a librarian. I'm speaking with Joseph S. Randazzo, who is a veteran of the Second World War. Today is July 10th, 2019, and we are at the Lindenhurst Memorial Library in Lindenhurst, New York. This recording is being submitted to the Library of Congress Veterans History Project in Washington, D.C. Mr. Randazzo, please tell us about your experiences in the Battle of the Bulge.
The first combat in the Battle of the Bulge, the division originally arrived in Europe in late September 1944. It was in England. They went to England, and then they completed further training. I didn't join them then. I joined them as a replacement in January 1945. But they went into combat Christmas Eve 1944, and they were on the northern part of the Bulge by Hoplitz and Manet and St. Vincent, in that area we were. And I joined them there. And the thing I remember was the bitter cold and the fact that our equipment was lousy, especially our boots. Boots was not made for snow and ice, regular combat boots. And keeping your feet warm, that was the toughest thing you had to do. And in combat, you never got enough sleep. So you always remember that. You seem to never. But there were times when after the Battle of the Bulge, on January 15th, we had the heaviest casualties. We lost 30 men were killed one day by a place called Hoplitz.
And that was just after you joined.
I joined around the 3rd of January. And 2 platoons come out of the woods. We were supposed to capture the town of Hoplitz, and when they out in the middle of the field there was 2 feet of snow on the ground. They got machine gun and rifle fire and mortar fire, and that's where most of the cattle. The guys that didn't get hit jumped and dived in the snow, and they laid there till it got dark and had to work their way back out. They had 3 machine gun squads. They had the first platoon, 2nd platoon, 3rd platoon. I was in the 3rd platoon. And we were just coming out of the woods, and the other 1st platoon were just in the field there, And that's the most casualty we got one day, was that January 15th, 19. And the last casualty we got was April the 5th. A good friend of mine. I met him on the boat going over. We were on a Liberty ship. The British were English. It was an English Liberty ship, and the weather was terrible in the North Atlantic. And there were 3 holes in it, 800 men to each hold in the Liberty ship, stacked up 5 high. The guys are laying in their bunk, throwing up on the guys underneath them. And for some reason, me and Melnick, his name is Melnick John, didn't get seasick. But we had to hide because they would get us. The officers would get us to clean up the messes. So we were always hiding all over the boat. We never slept in the bunks. We slept on the top deck for the 14 days, And he was killed on April the 5th, a Jewish boy from Chicago.
And he was the last?
He was the last casualty. He got shot in the face with a machine pistol out on patrol. He was only 19. He wasn't even 19 yet.
And how old were you? You must have been around
same age. I was 18 on D-Day, June 6th. And I went down and enlisted. If I didn't enlist, I never would have made the war. But that time, it was a lot different. Patriotism, everybody had it in them. During World War II, everybody did something. And I wanted to go in the Navy. My mother wouldn't sign. So I wound up going and wound up in the Army.
And what was her objection to the Navy?
Nothing. She just didn't want me to go in. Because on my block where I lived in Douglas Street in Brooklyn, there were all Italian families mostly, and a lot of... I don't know if you know it, but the most ethnic group in the American Army in World War II were Italians. There are more Italians there were more Italians than any other ethnic group in the American Army. And my block and stuff, we must have had 10 or 15 boys killed in action. My next door neighbor, Benny, a good friend of mine, he died on D-Day on Omaha. He was killed in Omaha. He was 19. And my mother didn't want me to go in, so she couldn't sign. But when I was 18, she couldn't.
Right,
I went down, I enlisted. And I did my training in Camp Robinson, Arkansas. And at that time, being they needed infantrymen so bad in World War II, what they did is they made 10 camps in the United States, strictly for IRTCs, they call them, Infantry Replacement Training Centers, and they're all down south. They're Camp Blanding, Florida, Camp Robinson, Arkansas, throughout the whole. All they did was 16 weeks of basic training. They taught you the machine gun, the mortar, bazooka, rifle, anything to do with the infantry. That's what they told you. So that when you went overseas, wherever they needed you, that's what they put you. If they needed machine gunners, you became a machine gunner. If they needed a mortarman or rifleman, that's what they put you in.
And you were trained in all of those.
And you were trained in all of those.
Disciplines.
That's why they call it infantry replacement training centers. And they taught you just these basic infantry gun weapons. That's it. And after 16 weeks, they gave you a 10-day delay en route to go home. They gave you 10 days to get to Fort Meade, Maryland. And I shipped out from there, from Fort Meade, Maryland. When I got there, they gave you combat boots, rifle, your helmet, steel helmet, and cartridge belt. They give you all that there, and you were officially on your way over. Yeah, that's what how they worked it there. The boat landed in Le Havre, France.
Okay, right to France.
Le Havre, yeah. In the middle of the night, the launchers took us ashore, and we walked right through the streets of Le Havre, right to the railroad station, and we had the 40 and 8s, and we got on a train, and the train took us to Givet, France. And there they had a rebel depot, they called it. Replacement depot it was called. And from there you were there 2 days, 1 day, 2 days, and they assigned you to different divisions. Melnick and I both went to the 75th Infantry Division. And he spoke German fluently. He was born in Germany, and he came here as a child, but he spoke German fluently. And they put him in company headquarters to interrogate prisoners, and that's what got him killed. He was out on patrol looking to get prisoners when he got killed.
See.
But and we got his effects, so we sent him home to his family. So after the Battle of Bulge, we were supposed to go for a rest area, but the Germans had kind of attacked down in southern France, a place called Colmar, the Colmar Pocket. And we went down, they put us on trains, and we went down to southern France. We slept out in 48 again, you know. And when we got to southern France, we got off at Luneville, France. And we walked through the station. We got on bus trucks, and the trucks took us to right outside of a small town, and I forgot the name of it. Anyway, we relieved units of the 3rd Infantry Division down there. And then we pushed the last Germans out of what the French considered their property. The Germans considered Alsace-Lorraine their property, you know. And but that was a place called, we called it the last Wolfgangsen, the city right on the Rhine. You know, we captured that place there. We took some casualties there, not too many, but our company didn't, but our regiment, the 289 took a lot of casualties there. And the artillery barrage, they lost a lot of men there. And then from there, they sent us, we got back on the trains again after that was finished there, and we went up to Holland. And we were attached to the British 6th Army up there. And we were on the Maas River, and the Germans were on the other side of the Maas River. But that was a good rest area. You know, we got cleaned up. We washed got a chance to clean our clothes, washed up, took showers, stuff. We got all new equipment and stuff like that. And then after about a week, we were there about a week and a half. We crossed the Maas River on little assault boats, which is the 75th and 35th Division in the British 1st Army. We were attached to them. We crossed to Venlo, and we captured the city of Venlo in Holland. And the Germans were on the move, mostly retreating at that time, you know, up in there. Then from there, they put us on trucks again after Venlo, and we went down. We jumped back into the 9th Army, and we were on the Rhine, and we crossed the Rhine on the 25th of March. And we were set up on, I was on a levee. My machine gun was firing on the other side. And units of the 79th Division went through us. They went over first, you know. Then we went over the next day. And we went to Navy. The Navy took us over, and Navy Ducks, they took us across. I was surprised to see U.S. Navy. And they took us across on the other side of the Rhine. And we established a perimeter. So they built a pontoon bridge. And we were on the pontoon bridge shooting at anything floating down the river. So the Germans they would try to float mines down and whatnot. So we were there for about 3 days on the river there. And at least we got some rest then, sure. You know. And then from there we moved inland, and we got part of the Ruhr Pocket, We were in a rural pocket, and we were capturing small towns. We took a lot of prisoners. By that time, they were surrendering by the thousands. You know,
Sure.
There was a regular army, but then every once in a while you run into SS or you run into paratroopers, and you had to kill them. You know, they wouldn't surrender, and or one place we ran into, they started shooting at us, and we started. They were all kids, 14, 15, 16-year-olds. We killed a lot of them, and they didn't. We didn't realize, but you know, with the armor-piercing bullets, would go right through the walls. You know, of the houses. It would be up there in northern Germany was small towns, farmland, you know. Right. I got to tell you one story. I seen somebody running by some houses all the way down. I shot at him. He went down. Later on, I went looking for him, and I found him. Somebody picked him up and put him up against the wall. He was still alive. I hit him with an armor-piercing bullet. The bullet went in here, come out here, made a little hole here.
Into his pelvis?
Into his pelvis, and came out the other side.
And through the other pelvis on the other side?
Came right out, right through, busted him up inside. And somebody pulled his pants down, that's how I could see him. And so I took him, so they gave me a shot of morphine. They said, whenever you give morphine, they would put the time up here so you wouldn't get too many shots of morphine. And I took my knife out. And he says in perfect English, he says to me, "Don't kill me." I said, "I'm not going to kill you." I cut his epaulets off, you know, and I mailed them home. And I had them home after the war. And he was a captain, and I had 2 pits on it. And I found out later through Google, when I Googled it out there, that you could tell what outfit what kind of a captain he was from the piping on the side of the colors of the piping, design of the piping. He was an engineer. You know, he was an engineer, captain of engineers. So my brother-in-law, when he was about 14, 15 years old, seen him. I had a bunch of German money with swastika on him. And he says to me, "Can I have him?" I said, "Yeah, go ahead, take him." And he took those things too. Now he died very young. He developed muscular dystrophy, and he died. He was in his 40s. When he passed away, I asked his wife for this stuff, and she didn't know nothing about it. And about 2 years ago, I bought my niece's house, and I'm telling her, she said, "Oh, I got a lot of my father's stuff." I went through and I found one of the epaulets. They were sterling silver, those pits. They were square, you know, he was a captain. And he was a captain of the engineers. He had a pistol, somebody already took that.
Sure. So you were, I imagine, in Europe right up until the end of the war?
Well, no, I got wounded on April 7th, 1945. I got shot through the leg. I spent a year in the Army hospital.
Okay.
And that's the end of, And that was a week before my division pulled off the line, April 14th, 1944. They sustained a lot of casualties.
44 or 45?
45.
45. Just checking.
They sustained a lot of casualties in the division. They had over 1,000 killed in action. And we were in combat 94 days, officially.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Well, not like division, the 2nd Division, 45th Division. They were in for years, 2, 3 years they were in combat. 3rd Infantry Division, we came later.
Where was the hospital that you ended up in?
I was in the hospital in England for 4 months. And then they flew me home. See, at that time, the war was over. They operated on me, and that's all I had to do was heal. I was 18 years old. All I had to do was heal. But they sent a lot of POWs home first. They were in bad shape, the ones that were in bad shape. Then they flew me home around early July 1945 on a C-46. C-46 is a 4-engine equivalent of the DC-3. Later on, after they called it the DC-4, later on, it was 4 engines. And landed in Iceland. And they refueled. I remember coming down in Iceland, I was running right by the window, I was on a cart like that, right by the window. Not a tree. You couldn't see. Iceland had no trees, no rock. But when we got there, the Red Cross women, people come on board. They gave us coffee and buns and whatnot, And then they flew me. I went to Presque Isle, Maine. And from Presque Isle, Maine, I was there for 2 weeks. They have to find a hospital for you. So I was supposed to go to Holloran Hospital, which was in New York. but that was full. So they sent me to Fort Devens, Massachusetts. And I was there, Fort Devens, for another 4 months. Then they sent me to, they made Camp Upton, a convalescent hospital at the end of the war. And I went there, and I got discharged from there. I got into the Army there, and I got discharged from Camp Upton. I got what they call a medical discharge. I got CDD, Certified Disability Discharge. And that's basically my time in combat.
What made you become a machine gunner? How did that
That's what they needed. Well, when I first went over, I went into the Mortar Squad.
And you were just assigned?
I was assigned to the Mortar Squad. And the Mortar Squad had, I was an ammo bearer. You carried a pouch. And you had 3 mortars in the front, 3 mortars in the back, and a pouch.
I guess they were heavy mortars?
Oh, yeah, 60 millimeter. They were about that big. That fat. They were heavy.
Wow.
I was 130 pounds. Wow. You know, I was afraid. If I had a bullet that hit one of them, they wouldn't even find enough to bury you.
Right.
You know? So, but I got a chance to, about a week, one of the fellas in the machine gun squad was wounded, and I volunteered for the machine gun squad. That's why I went into the machine gun squad. But in those days, we had the A6 machine gun, which was one with bipods. It didn't have the tripod, but 2 people had to carry it, just one man. So what they did was the old machine guns required a 5-man squad. The newer machine guns required only 3 men. So you had the gunner and 2 ammo bearers. The other machine gun, you had a sergeant, you had a gunner, you had an assistant gunner, and you had 2 ammo bearers. But being a shortage of men, they made this particular machine gun. You could walk and fire it. Had a handle on the top. And about 3-4 years ago, I went to the vet page where they have with my daughter, you know, and I see they had my machine gun there. I picked it up and I said, I carried that son of a bitch for 4 months. It weighed a ton. I couldn't. Well, I was 18. It's a lot different to carry. But I really couldn't figure out how heavy your son of a gun was, you know. But that's the type of machine gun we had.
What about food? How did they feed you? How did you?
We had K rations and the C rations. Whenever they were going to go into combat, we were going into the attack the next morning, they would give us 9 boxes of K rations, and you put them in your backpack. And you had breakfast, lunch, and dinner on them. And they boxes were that big, about that wide.
Right.
And they had 4 cigarettes, a piece of chocolate, a chunk of chocolate, powdered coffee, a mix of water, a small tin of in the mornings. For breakfast they had eggs, dried eggs. For lunch they had cheese, and for dinner they would have spam, and spam and 4 crackers. They would have in them, and that was basically for each meal, And at times, and they would also give you a couple of cans of C rations, and they would have the C rations, and they were either hash or stew, or the macaroni and the sauce, and then Franks and beans, And that's all. They only had 3 or 4. The tankers would get the 10-in-1 rations, and they had good rations in them, and we would trade them cigarettes for the ration from the tankers,
Sure.
To get from them the food. But whenever they were able to bring you hot food, like when we were on the Rhine before we crossed the Rhine, and when we were in Holland before we crossed the Russian, they could bring hot food up. And the first time we were in Holland, we were online, going to have dinner or whatever, and we got strafed by jets, German jets. Never seen them before. Never knew what they were. We heard this loud noise. It didn't hit anything. They don't hit nobody. But we heard this loud noise. Whoosh. We looked up, and it was the first time we ever seen a jet fighter.
Sure.
They strafed us in Holland, but nobody got hurt or anything at that time.
Wow.
I guess they were too damn fast or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and,
the noise must have been terrible.
Yeah, the noise was real loud. We didn't know what the hell it was.
Sure.
What it was, to make that noise like that. Then later on we realized, but we were told it was a German jet, twin-engine jet. They had what they call M110s or whatever, ME110. Yeah, that was up in Holland.
While you were in the middle of the Battle of the Bulge, was the enemy in sight? Could you see the enemy, or
occasionally, very rarely, in the woods? they saw you a lot of times, you know, when because you were advancing on them. And we always fired back, and we fired back. We've seen them at times. But sometimes they were in bunkers, and they would fire at you in the bunker. We would hit them with a bazooka in the bunker, you know. Bazookas are more efficient on the houses and the bunkers than they were against the tanks. You know, the German tanks were awesome. I pity those poor American tankies, but I seen a couple of them get hit. They used to call them Ronsons. They used to burn like anything when they got hit. And we were down in southern France in Colmar, and we had three Shermans with us. We attacked the town of Wolfgangston, and as the tanks came up, we were with the tanks coming up. We were just walking toward the, and one of them got hit by a German Panther. A Tiger tank hit him, blew the other two guys turned around and skid out, took off, left. And, you know, that was it. They had no part of it. And we were lucky there that there was an American TD outfit close by, and they had 90s on them. Now, the 90s would knock hell out of the German tanks. But the Germans they had a short barrel 75s. And unless they were real close and hit them on the back or the sides, they were in the front, they were ineffective in the front. But the 90s would knock the hell out of them. Now, the TDs, had 90s on them, but they were very lightly armored, and they had an open turret on the top, and they had a 50 caliber machine gun up on top. But the Germans were afraid of them, the 90s. Yeah, and we had one of those was with us. It fired, hit the first German tank, and the others backed away.
What do you remember the most about being in combat?
Being cold in Belgium, being cold. The feet, especially your feet. Mm-hmm. We used to we get a chance, we'd take our shoes off and rub our feet, change our socks. We had a pair of socks in the helmet. Sure. I would take the dry socks out of the helmet, change them, take the dirty wet socks, put them back roll them up and put them in the helmet, let them dry up in my head, and change the socks and rub my feet to keep them warm, to get them warm. That's amazing. Later on, they came up with snow packs, but by then the snow was gone. They're the shoes they use in Korea. That's the ones they use in Korea.
I see.
The snow packs. But your feet were all cold and wet, and you were cold and wet. You had the overcoat. You used to sleep, try to get two guys together in a foxhole to keep warm. You know.
And you had no ability, you couldn't make fires, I suppose?
We made fires when we had the chance to. What we did, how we made the fires, we get a can. We filled it with dirt, pour gasoline in it, and light it. And then that would be 2-3 hours it would burn with the gasoline to keep warm. And we especially do that when we were traveling in the trucks. We would have two of those in the trucks, so light lit up to keep warm. And that's how we kept warm. Or else, when I first joined my company, G Company, when I first joined them, they had a big barrel of burning wood, and about 5 guys around, 6 guys around, keep running, keep warm. And I came up, where's the company headquarters? It's over there, you know. When Melnick and I first joined them, you know, and we joined the company.
What about sleep? What was that situation like?
Never got enough sleep, especially in combat. Never got enough, especially being a machine gunner, because you were 4 on and 4 off all the time. But, you know, you take turns on the gun and whatnot, and you never got enough sleep.
So 4 hours on, 4 hours off. So
at night. I'm talking about night.
Sure.
You know, because you would have to set up a perimeter for defense at night, and you were on for 4 hours. And then after 4 hours, you get relieved. You have to sleep. You've never had enough sleep in combat. You know, when you get the chance, or when there was a rest area like around the Rhine and the Marsh River, you had. When we were on the Marsh River, we were building in a house belonged to a guy named Herman and his wife, and we slept on the living room on the floor, with sleeping bags, and they slept on a cellar. He survived the German occupation. When the Germans would leave, before they left, they would rounded up all the young men, all the men, and shipped them to Germany, and a bunch of them hid in a well. And there was a room. They had a room on the side of the well, and they were in there for almost 3 months before the British liberated them. The women at night would lower food down to them and take the waste up. And he told us they lived in that room right off the well for 3 months. So he didn't get shipped out to Germany. Sure. A lot of the young men slave labor. They shipped them on German slave labor, yeah. Henry, we gave him cigarettes and food and whatnot. He carved wooden shoes, Dutch shoes, a little shoe about this big. His shoes for each one of us. And I sent them, mailed them home to my mother. My mother had them on the wall for years in our kitchen, you know. I don't know whatever happened to him. He did it. Thanked us for what we used to give him, you know.
Sure.
Yeah. But they loved American cigarettes. Everybody went nuts for American cigarettes. In fact, the French, when we were in France, they wanted to sell them 20 grand, or those, and they didn't want that. They wanted Camels or Luckies or Chesterfields. That's what they wanted. They didn't want no Rawleys. They didn't want none of the other stuff. Yeah. We would trade them a pack of cigarettes for a bottle of cider, or sometimes vodka. Well, not vodka, cognac. Okay. We get 3/4 packs of cigarettes to get a bottle of cognac, you know, from them. No, in France. Yeah.
What was the health situation like? Were you all able to more or less stay healthy, avoid cold, flu, anything like that?
There were a lot of casualties from trench feet and frozen feet.
Sure, frostbite.
A lot of it during the Bulge and down in southern France, because your feet were constantly wet. And you try to keep them warm. You try to keep the circulation going. Sure. But there were a lot of trench feet. I remember my feet hurt, and I went to the battalion aid station. I told them they were only back about a mile behind them, and I told them my feet hurt. He said, "All right, lay down." He took my shoes off. He took my socks off, rubbed my feet, gave me a clean pair of socks. Put your shoes on and go back. Yeah, and that's about it. You know, but a lot of guys had their feet swelled up from the trench foot and the frozen feet. And they had a lot of problems there. Yeah. Other than that, I never had a cold. You know, I guess that's because I was 18. Yeah. And, you know, I never had a cold or anything. But we had the overcoats. Sure. Wore, you know. The Germans had the overcoats with that long, dark green overcoats. That's what they wore, you know. And later on, when they surrendered, they still had someone had the coats on, but they always threw the helmets away, and they wore the flannel like a little cap. They wore, and we didn't most of the time we didn't even search them because there were so many of them, you know. And I captured two German prisoners surrendered to me. They come up out of the woods, hands up, and I told them, come over to me. And I mean, they had no guns or anything, so I said. I sat on the hood of the Jeep and I made got some running. And I took them back to company headquarters and I left them there. Two guys, yeah, two prisoners. Yeah. Then we liberated a factory in Holland. It was an underground factory. It never was bombed, but it was all slave labor. Mm-hmm. They had Russians, French, Polish workers in there, and some Italian workers in there. And I spoke Italian. I was talking to them. They were from Sicily too, and I gave them cigarettes and I gave them some K rations. And they said they're walking back to Sicily. I said, "You got a long walk from here, yeah, from Holland." And they're two Sicilians. Like I'm Sicilian too. My father anyway was from Sicily, and but they were malnutrition. They were all malnutrition, but some of them were in good shape. Most of them weren't that good. But they're all mostly Russian and Polish, some French and some Italian, Russian and Polish. There was an underground factory they worked.
And they were making military
armaments. They were having armaments. It was never bombed. It was in Holland, though.
Right. Did you have any duties besides carrying ammo? I guess when you were a machine gunner.
No, we carried a gun. That was it, basically. Yeah. We were in the machine gun squad, you know, and we didn't do too much. We stayed among ourselves more so than, and we didn't mingle too much with the riflemen. We got to know some of them. We got to know them. What they were riflemen wanted on machine gun belts. You had 3 ball, 1 armor piercing, and 1 tracer. Now they wanted the armor piercing bullets. So we got a chance. We would take them off this machine gun belt, and we give them to them. They would put them in clips, and they would use them in house-to-house fighting. In house-to-house, they would fire right through the wall, the armor piercing. They'd go through the wall about that thick, and they liked that. So whatever chance we had, we would give it to them, replace them. But they had a cordite chip on them, and it was very strong. It would go through a tree this big, right through it, cordite. But the ball would hit it, was flattened right out.
You mentioned the SS. I guess they were especially to be feared because they would not surrender without...
They wouldn't surrender. They fought to the death.
To the very end.
And
would they commit suicide? Or?
No, they surrendered. Some of them surrendered. But the officers, we didn't take them prisoner. We shot them. Especially the officers. Because if you ever got caught with you got captured, and you had any German equipment on you, you were dead. They shot you.
Was that any of the German army, or especially the SS?
Even the German army would do that. If you found a pistol on you, a German pistol on you, or anything that pretended, you got shot. They shot you. Yeah. And the first dead bodies I seen were we joined when we first up in Belgium, when the division was first put together. Some of them were attached to the 82nd Airborne, and the regiment was attached to the 2nd Armored Division. And we were walking through this town, going into this town, and as the 2nd Armored Division just recaptured the town, and as we're going in, laying on the side of the road, a dead GI, American. I didn't see a scratch on him, mark on him, but he was face down. His overcoat he had no overcoat, no helmet, just laying down. And about 25 feet away, 2 dead Germans shot in the head. Somebody shot him in the head, killed him, shot in the head. Execution, yes. And I said to myself, holy God, they don't fool around. They get, the first dead ones I've seen. And it just made a real impression on you,
How did you handle the fear? Fear must have been...
You did what you had to do, but they say, there's no such thing as not having to be. You're afraid, but you had to do your job, and you did it, no matter what. You had to do, you did it, but you were afraid all the time. What I hated most was artillery. The artillery fire. We got caught in a barrage out in southern France. I'm telling you, guys are yelling and screaming, hey, Mommy, the shells are hitting the trees, and the shrapnel flying all over. You try to put your whole body into your steel helmet, it won't fit, and down there, we took a shelling down there. It was terrible. Down in southern, I hated artillery. That was the worst, Do
you have any good memories of?
Yeah, good memories of when we were up in Holland. We had a USO show for us. We had a US show, and there were some girls, some of the local girls there to dance and whatnot with us up in Holland. That was right after we came up from southern France. We were dirty. We didn't take a shower in over a month. We had our field jackets were crushed with dirt and everything. And we got to Holland. The first thing the division commander said, wash. We took all our clothes. We washed them. They had fires burning pots. We put all our clothes in them, washed our clothes and everything, and put them out to dry and clean ourselves up. Got a chance to shave, shower, up in Holland. But we hadn't showered in over a month, and we got hot food up there. We got pancakes and but no syrup. They used sugar water. They mixed sugar and water together, and that was the syrup. But it was good though. The pancakes were good. We had stew and hot meals, chicken. One hot meals, Then once you get into combat, forget it. The trucks will never catch up with you. Because you're on the move constantly, And you lived on K rations and C rations and cigarettes. They gave you 5 packs of cigarettes a week free. Combat troops we didn't have to pay for our cigarettes. You got 5 packs of cigarettes a week. And plus what was in the K rations. You got 4 cigarettes in each K ration. And I smoked at the time, and the guys that didn't smoke would trade you for different things for the cigarettes, Yeah.
How about worst memories? I guess you've covered a lot of that already.
Yeah, the worst memories were when people got hurt, killed. When we see Melnick, we couldn't even recognize his body. We picked his body up the next morning. He was hit in the face with a machine pistol. He must have hit 5, 6, 7 bullets in the head, in the face, There was nothing left to his face and whatnot. I got his personal specs together. I put him in a box. And the company commander, the lieutenant, actually stamped him and we sent him back to his family. He was in there.
Were you ever in touch with his family after that?
I had his address, and I always wanted to go, but I never got to go. One thing, when I first come home for the first 2 years, I always had that PDS bed, and I left home. I went down to North Carolina. I lived on the beach for about 8 months, 9 months, and I used to go into Camp Lejeune and over there, and I used to eat with them, the Marines there. Sometimes once in a while, I'd take a shower. They'd let me take a shower, and I would sleep in the bunks sometimes in the Camp Lejeune. Right after the war was wide open, you could go anywhere, Camp Lejeune. But then as I straightened out, I called my mother, send me money, I'm coming home, and I went home,
Yeah, PTSD must have been...
PTSD, yeah. All they called it at that time, they called it shell shock. They didn't call it what it is today. There was no treatment for it, nothing. They did nothing for it in those days, There's a lot of guys that suffered from that. Some of them never recovered, really. I know when I was in the hospital, I was with a friend of mine, Tommy Colombo. He was at the 45th Infantry Division. He's wounded 5 times. The last time he got was American planes bombed, by mistake bombed, and he got big piece of shrapnel and hit him in the arm and took most of his arm off. But he had the hand, he had it, but which was useless. But he was in one of those casts like this, So when I was Fort Devens, Massachusetts, Level General Hospital up there, they told I wanted to come home, but being I was on crutches and walking, they said, the only way you're going to go home is if somebody comes and gets you by car. So I called my father up. And my father says, I'm coming to get you. Now, my father had an old Model A Ford. And he went on the black market. He bought four of those jerry cans. He went on the black market, got 4 of those cans, filled them up with gas, And the Model A Ford, 45 miles an hour downhill on the speed. And it took him 12 hours to go from New York City to Fort Devens, Michigan. He went by Boston Road to Boston and whatnot around this way. And Tommy told him, no, we're going back. They took Tommy home with him because he lived in Brooklyn too, Tommy. Mm-hmm. And we told him which way they were going through Worcester and Springfield, Mass. We saved about 5 hours coming home. I was sitting in the back. I had a cast up to here, and I had my leg on top of all the jerry cans, My Uncle Danny with my father came up with them, and Tommy and I sat in the back, And they decided to let me go home. They gave me a 30-day furlough, convalescent furlough, they called it, yeah. I was home for 30 days at that time.
And eventually your wounds healed, and you were back to...
Then they eventually they took the brace, the cast off. I had a brace with a cane until I started, It's the guy I got used to. It's healed up enough. I didn't need the cane anymore or whatnot. Mm-hmm. But I suffer with it today, though. It's this leg is bad. I got no cartilage left in my ankle, and it's bone on bone, and there's nothing they can do. The VA, I go to VA for everything, What saved me, the leg, was the fact when the bullet hit the bone, the shin, it didn't go straight through. It went to the side. The fibula in the back stayed full. It wasn't broken. That's what kept the leg together.
It ricocheted off the fibula bone. How about that?
Yes. The tibia was shot, blew a whole big chunk out of tibia. But the fibula was missed, went out and went up this way.
See. Okay.
And that's what saved my leg. It told me that.
Sure.
Because if you'd have lost the fibula, you probably would have lost the leg.
And you were awarded a Bronze Star. Is that true? Yeah.
I have a Bronze Star.
And was that for something in particular, or?
No, it was a bit. Everyone who had a combat infantryman's badge is entitled to a Bronze Star.
Okay. Meritorious service.
Meritorious service, yeah, Bronze Star, But you had to be in combat 30 days before you got the infantryman's badge. If you were in there 29 days, you didn't get it. 30 days, you had to be at least 30 days in combat. In order to get the combat infantryman's badge.
And that's regardless of whether you were wounded or anything else.
Yeah. If you say you were wounded, you were in combat a week and you got wounded, you weren't entitled to it. You had to be in combat a month in order to get the combat infantry. I'm proud of that more than anything else. The CIB, Yeah.
And I'm sure you have that at home.
Oh yeah, I did the original. The originals I gave you when they gave them to me. was in Holland. Everybody got it in Holland. All the infantrymen, the company commanders came around. Randazzo, here's yours. No, here's yours. I gave everybody their combat infantry's badge. I mailed mine home. Sterling silver. The original ones were sterling silver. My nephew, I had all my medals all in a box, and he says, give them to me. And he took them, he had a display made with them, on my picture, and my dog tags. I still have my dog tags. They're in there too, and the combat infantry's badge there too.
Have you ever gone back over to Europe?
No. I had tickets to go to Italy. My brother and I, we were all set to go. He had a heart attack. He died, and I just couldn't go. I had relatives there. I had 3 uncles in the Italian army in World War II. They were on the other side. But they survived the war. They came home.
Any other thoughts or things that come to mind?
I belong to the 75th Division Association, but they're all gone now. My company commander passed away about 7-8 years ago. His name is Captain Drulard. As far as I know, I'm the only guy left in the DAV in Lindenhurst from World War II. The last fellow that passed away was Harry Pro. And he said, run the parades, Lindenhurst. Memorial Day. Me, I was a part of that too. I did that for years with Harry, run the parades in Lindenhurst.
Were you in touch with men you served with for any length of time after the war?
No, not too much. Because most of them were out west, in the Midwest. I met one guy from the 75th Division, but wasn't my company already. He was in another regiment. I knew him for about 6 months, and he passed away. He lived right here in Lindenhurst too. Forgot his name. He passed away. He was in the 75th Division, but he was in another regiment. He wasn't in the regiment I was in. Division. He was in the 289th. He had the 289th, 290, and 291st. I was in the 291st. But other than that, most of them were all from the Midwest, and most of them came from. They were a cadre from other outfits. What they did, they took the cadre, the sergeants and corporals, and when they started the division up, they had all little men, and they were training them up in Fort Leonard Wood, I believe, in Kansas. They came from. Melnick was the only guy I was really close friends with. I was friends with the other guys too, but not so much. But Melnick and I came over on the boat together. That's why we met on the boat.
And where was he from?
Chicago, south of Chicago. He was Jewish. He was a Jewish boy. And John, he was a lot of fun. We used to sit in the box, all the two of us together. And he said, give me a rub, give me a rub. We kept hitting each other with the elbow because we were so tight in there.
Sure. And he spoke German?
He spoke fluent German. He was born in Germany. He came here as a young man, as a young boy. And I said, how'd you wind up here? And he says, I got drafted. He's buried in Margranten Cemetery in Holland. It says April 6th. He died April 5th. He picked up his body April 6th. The night of April 5th, about 10 o'clock at night, he got killed. They ran into another patrol or something, and he got shot.
And at the time he was out searching for prisoners?
Yeah, they were getting it from prisoners, yeah. And the patrol, that hurt me hard. I still don't get over it. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. That was very informative, yeah.
Thank you. Good.